And good evening from San Antonio. This is Matt Shearer, the founder of Career Recon, along with my good friend and partner from the Military Transition Roundtable and co-founder of the Military Transition Roundtable, Don Gleason. And tonight we have the pleasure to talk to Jeff Carter about what I would like to call the 24-month plan. So in tonight's Career Recon 401, we're going to look at Jeff's 24-month plan with the hopes that we will record this and people will be able to see it at a later date and they can use it as a guide for their own transition. Of course, never is one transition like the same, but there's some common denominators in Jeff's profile that I think are really, really important that we should discuss. So we're going to take Jeff to his last assignment there at Randolph Air Force Base, where what exactly was your title, Jeff? I could never get it exactly right. Why don't you explain it to me, what your title was?
Yeah, sure, Matt. Thanks. So I served as the executive agent for Randolph, which under joint basing essentially means the installation commander there. And then I doubled as the police chief for Joint Base San Antonio as well. So I had all the law enforcement and security across all the bases in San Antonio. It was a good job, that's for sure.
And you probably had a job that often had phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning, right?
Yes, and during COVID-19, when folks were quarantining, I was working long hours. So yes, indeed.
But when you got to Randolph, that was before the COVID-19 pandemic, you saw the clouds on the horizon as far as your career, and you knew that eventually you were going to be leaving the Air Force after this tour of duty. Is that what you had thought, or did
Absolutely. You? No, I knew coming into this assignment that this was going to be my last assignment. And so we had prepared, my wife and I had prepared that we would begin the transition journey. And when we got the orders here to San Antonio, it just so happened to coincide with a place that we really enjoyed, where we liked to be. And so we decided to try to make a plan to be able to settle here. And so we were ready to do that whenever we first arrived back in San Antonio back in the summer of 2018.
So let's put you into the Mr. Peabody Wayback Machine. We're going to put you a couple years in the future, 2022. What would you tell any officer enlisted guy who's got 24 months to go? What would be the first thing you would have them think about?
Make a plan. That's for sure. Make a plan, use your family, make sure you understand that it's a holistic environment that you're sort of working your way into. And you didn't get to the point in your career where you can retire and separate alone if you have a family, and you got to make sure that as you transition, you don't do that alone either.
So what were some things that you would suggest for people with families, or as far as the transition part?
Well, 2 years out, it's a big decision. You don't really know what you're going to do. It's the first time for me in 26 years that I've ever really had an opportunity to choose. You know, normally you go where the military tells you and you make the best of the assignment, you do great things, and you move on to the next one. But a few years ago, whenever my wife and I first sat down and knew that we were going to be looking at this transition and retirement, we basically looked at 3 questions, and the idea was we needed to make a determination on which one of these 3 questions was going to be our anchor point. We needed to think about where we wanted to live, what we wanted to do, or really what our salary needs were and how much we wanted to make. And so for us, I have a son who's a freshman in high school right now, and I knew that the transition time frame for me would be right at the time where he could start and finish in the same high school. And so we decided that our pivot point was going to be, where do we want to live? And so we chose New Braunfels, Texas as where we want to live. And we built out from there. But it's a family discussion and a family decision. And if you can figure out which of those 3 topics you really want to choose and prioritize, then you can build out from there.
Don, you and I were to talk a couple of cohorts ago about somebody that had kind of got his goals mixed up. He said he wanted to be part of his have family and all that, and yet he accepted a job that required 3 hours of travel time every day.
Each day, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's really important that people really talk to their spouse and live through these promises. Okay.
Yeah, I want to congratulate Jeff, because that is a challenge. 24 months out to start figuring out, where I want to live, what I want to do, all those questions that you had on there. And that's important, because you're right. I've seen too many people who don't figure that out. And then when they start getting job offers, they don't have criteria to pick from.
Right.
You had criteria to pick from, and it makes it easier, right? Good job.
So now we talk about the pace. So you and I have talked about this, Jeff. Walk me through your career roles and help people understand what you mean by PACE, which is PACE, which is the first letters of these four groups here.
Sure. So one of the primary things that I've learned across my career is any system or any program or anything like that, you have to have a primary, an alternate, a contingency, and emergency plan to be able to make sure you're enduring and survivable. And so transition's no different. I will tell you, Matt, I needed to figure out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. So I used the PACE plan that I'd learned in the military and decided that I would figure out what I really wanted to do, the primary job I wanted to go for, an alternate job, a contingency job. And if the worst came to worst, then what was the emergency job that I needed to get to be able to pay the bills? So for me, I worked with Don Gleason, and we did a lot of conversation, and he kind of helped me kind of break down a little bit of where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And for me, the primary after our conversations turned out to be risk and compliance. Whether that was insurance or whether that was going to be banking or whether it was security, it didn't really matter. It basically was the fact that I enjoyed risk and managing risk, and I enjoyed compliance programs and assessments and those type of things. But I had another passion too, and that was my alternate plan, which was junior ROTC. I really wanted to go and give a try at being a junior ROTC detachment commander. So I did the entire program to be qualified to be a junior ROTC instructor here at a high school someplace. Then my contingency plan was federal civil service, and my emergency plan was retail. Because there are a lot of places like Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart that have military hiring programs to bring you in as assistant management and those kind of things. So I had all four of those kind of put down as my PACE plan, and that's where I started to build from.
Okay.
If I could, can I jump in, Matt? With a quick question, because I love the conversation, Jeff, you and I had a couple of years ago. And we kind of asked the question, what is it about the current job that you like? And probably more important, what you didn't like.
Right.
And I love that you spent about 2 weeks thinking about that. And then we met at Starbucks and had a coffee. Can you give a short piece back on that?
Absolutely. So I talked about whenever this started that I'm sort of the police chief for Joint Base San Antonio. So law enforcement, force protection, all of those kind of things. There's some things that I really love about this job, and there's some things that I really don't love about this job. Just talking about what I don't necessarily love that I didn't want to do again was the people piece, dealing with the folks that break the law and the criminals and whatnot. And that's kind of daunting, and it's tiresome. It takes a little bit of your soul whenever you do it for a few decades. But at the same time, I love the risk aspect of security and being able to plan, and being able to pull together a program to mitigate or eliminate risk, to be able to do the security mission for whatever the resource is that's there. And I enjoyed the compliance piece too, building a program, making sure that program was enduring, making sure that there were ways to be able to inspect that program and keep it where it needed to be. So I knew I wanted to move away from the human aspect. I knew I wanted to move away from sort of the bad that goes along with policing sometimes. And I wanted to focus more on the program management aspect of the skill set that I had basically had a chance to pick up over the last couple of decades.
So by you had a clear idea where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
Next phase of this 24-month plan.
Yeah, congratulations. Too many people don't think about what they don't like about the job. They just think, oh, this is what I've been doing. This is what the Air Force or military had me do. Therefore, I'll keep in it. And then a year in, they're like, I really don't like this. And you did it up front. So that's so important.
Yeah, well, thanks for helping with those questions and figuring out what really I was looking for.
Oh, you're welcome.
So here we are 12 months ago, a year out. And what was the next focus?
So now it was basically building that network, and you'll hear in pretty much any cohort you go through, or CMA or USO or any of those, that the big piece is a network and making sure that you have a network. And job opportunities are more than likely going to come through that network than they are through that resume or through that online job application site that you went to. So for me, it was time to nurture. It was time to build relationships, meaningful relationships with people. And work through that so that I had an opportunity to learn, so that I had an opportunity to build a group of people to support my transition, and for me to be able to help support some of their things as well.
Let's talk about some key questions that you ask yourself as you're building that network. Obviously, the who part, and the how, but what was your LinkedIn strategy?
Well, my LinkedIn strategy was pretty simple. I found folks that I wanted to add to my network based off of things that I was interested in. And I knew compliance and risk management was what my focus was going to be. And I knew that I was interested in some sort of either security or banking or insurance industry. So I started working through the people that I already had a network with to ask if they had anyone that I could reach out to, anyone that I could make contact with. I went to an awful lot of LinkedIn Mill City events here in San Antonio and met a large number of people. And what I did was I started adding those folks who had the niche that I was looking for into my network. And that helped me figure it out. You know, how do you add people that you want to add, or how do you find those people? And a lot of times it's through introductions. It's through putting yourself out there, but sometimes it's through just reaching out through InMail or asking somebody a question and starting a conversation. So my strategy was to build a group of individuals that I thought would be able to, that I would be able to learn from, that I would be able to follow, that I would be able to watch their posts and be able to help at least understand more of the enterprises that I was looking for.
I got to say something here. I know the workload that you're facing, and yet I was always amazed to see that you actually had time to contribute something or to work on stuff. So as somebody that kind of helped you with the LinkedIn strategy, I was very pleased to see a guy with a very busy schedule still find 5 or 10 minutes at times a week to actually use LinkedIn in a proper way.
I will tell you, it goes back to that family thing I said at first. My wife was bought in at 24 months, and she knew that there would be weekends where I would be getting up, having my cup of coffee, getting onto social media and LinkedIn and making a couple of comments, doing a computer-based training to try to close a gap in my resume or something like that. So you have to have that support of your family. And that was basically my secret sauce, if you will, to be able to do all that. It has to be a priority.
So we're now down to 9 months to go. It would be like right around September of last year. What were the key things that you were thinking about at this point?
Well, at this point, it was, I need to figure out and start really narrowing down my scope on the network and on what I wanted to learn and those type of things. And you can see some of the aspects of that board of advisors that you put forward there. I found industry leaders in insurance. I found industry leaders in banking. I used contacts from my old networks that I had built in the military and reached out. And as it turns out, probably a topic for another day, but a network contact from a previous assignment was what helped me get my foot in the door and my resume to a recruiter in the company that I ended up getting hired for. So the former military professionals were very critical to me. Reach out to them, tell them what you're doing, ask them if you can help them, ask them if there's anything that they could help you with, and try to rekindle some of those old relationships. But the other thing that's on here I want to draw attention to is that mastermind group. So you guys offered an opportunity for me to join a cohort. And I will tell you that turned out to be one of the best things that was offered to me. It was all free of charge, everything like that, but it was a group of transitioning individuals who you could sit and have a conversation with every other week. You made goals, and they kept me honest. And I will tell you that having a peer group to transition with turned out to be one of the best things ever, just to be able to have a bit of support as you're kind of going through this scary time.
Having formed this with Donna, we see, and I know we got Gil here, we've seen people kind of help each other and kind of, the accountability thing I think is really important as part of your transition journey. What did you say, Don?
Oh, 100%. And the way we kind of talk about that sometimes is I've talked to a lot of folks who go to a lot of events, but there's nothing that carries them through event to event. And Matt and I were sitting in a meeting probably about 6-8 months ago when all of a sudden the leader of the, how do you say it, the day, the transition workshop said, don't do this alone. And we started thinking, how do you not do this alone? I mean, you come to the event, you meet a few people, but you don't always stay in touch with them. You go back to work, you get busy, you got family things you're trying to do. There's so many demands on your time that I love the way you said that. You need an accountability group. You need people who can speak into you and can hold you accountable to your goals. And that's exactly what we're trying to create. So I'm glad it's working.
So here we are at 6 months to go. And that's when you started practicing for job interviews. And how did you work that? And that's right about the time the pandemic started to really muster itself here in San Antonio.
Yeah, so I made a choice that at 6 months out, I was going to start doing something I'd never done before, and that was interviewing for a job. I knew that really the window to really apply for things and probably be considered would be about 90 days out, but I needed some practice because I'd never done it before. And so I started using my resume and I started applying for jobs. Then I started taking the job ads that I would apply for, send those to folks in my network that happened to be at those companies and start conversations about the job opening, and my interest in the job and those type of things. And so I ended up getting a phone interview. So by the way, it doesn't just turn out to be success overnight, by the way. I had 14 failures before I found a way to be able to get through the phone screening and start getting into an actual interview and so on and so forth. So I ended up 14 failures, but I had 5 phone interviews, and the last phone interview that I had really turned out to get me through the process into a series of interviews that ended up turning into a job. But it wasn't easy because the questions and having to use something like the STAR format, which is situation, task, action, result, those are not ways that you normally talk, and you have to practice those type of things. And so I researched the company that I was interviewing for, and I found a number of different behavioral questions that were out there that had been asked and posted by former individuals that had gone through that same hiring screening process. And I made a couple of lists. So I'd work 12, 14 hours a day in the crisis action team with COVID response. And I've got about a 45-minute drive home to get back here from the base that I was at. So I'd call my wife on the way home and I'd say, all right, honey, ask me a question. And we would go through behavioral questions, and I would try to pick a story and formulate it in the STAR interview format and then move forward. My son helped me as well, and we would do it on the weekends. So again, that whole family thing, we were all in, and my wife helped me a great deal at being able to practice those interview questions. I would tell anybody though, that if you don't practice, you don't get good, and there's no way around it. There's no way to cheat that system. You have to study. You have to try to figure out what is meaningful to the company that you're interviewing for, and you have to be fluid. And the only way to do that is through practice.
So the other thing that we want to make sure people understand is that this is the time to start working with the VA to get your medical appointments.
Right. Yeah, that 6-month piece is, if you're doing a benefits upon delivery, you have to get it 180 days, start the process 180 days before your retirement. So in addition to that, your VA becomes something that you need to have a plan of action for as well, because if you miss those key milestones with the Department of Veterans Affairs, then you're going to end up being pushed to the bottom of the list, and you won't get your benefits determination until well after your retirement date. So thanks for putting that in there, because I will tell you, I'll foot stomp that one. Man, take care of yourself if you can. Take care of yourself, see the doctor, and start those processes all simultaneously.
And so now we're down to 3 months.
Hey.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Matt, I keep jumping in, but I just love some of this. I love some of these. You said you had 14 failures. What process did you put in place? How did you recover from those? Because that can be devastating to some people,
Sure.
as I've talked to folks. So how did you work through that?
Well, the first thing I did was I tracked every job I applied for, created a spreadsheet, and as soon as I would apply for it, I put it down on a spreadsheet, the date that I applied, the website, the job ad, everything like that, and I would track it, and I would make sure I knew where I was and continually go back. And for instance, the company that I ended up getting hired with, I applied for a few jobs there and didn't end up getting through the initial screening at all. And so what I would do is I would retool my resume. I would go back and I'd take a look at the job ad, because those are 14 failures. That's 14 specific resumes that I created. Every single job ad that I found, whether I was looking at something with Coleman here in New Braunfels, or with USAA, or with Black Rifle Coffee Company, or with Comel Independent School District. Those are all just a few of the places that I reached out and applied into. But each one of them had their own resume. So then whenever I didn't make it, I'd put it on my spreadsheet that I didn't make it. And then I would go and I would try to tool a resume to be able to do a little better. Sometimes I had the opportunity to reach back out to a hiring manager and ask for some feedback. I rarely got any good, meaningful feedback, but the times that I did, I made sure I took those notes and started to figure out how to incorporate that into my next job application that I was going to put in.
Excellent. Thanks.
So we're you now a month away. You are now a month away, and you have a job. Tell us about the job that you accepted with Amazon.
Yep. So I ended up applying for a physical security program management job, and it really is right in that risk and compliance piece that I had originally talked about. So the job essentially is I will be part of the construction team for new constructions of Amazon facilities, and I will go in with the construction manager to install the physical security systems and work with contractors to do that. So it's making sure that we're compliant with what the plans and the programs are that are in place for closed circuit TV, automated entry control, intrusion detection, and those type of things. So good part for me is 60% working at home, 40% travel here in Texas and Oklahoma. So it worked out pretty well. It really did. But it was hard to get through the Amazon interview process. It's not for the faint of heart, and you have to definitely prepare to be able to get into the loop interview and those type of things.
We're coming on the home stretch. What would be the last thing you would tell people as far as the last 3 months?
Yeah, the last 3 months, if any time in your career you have ever needed to put yourself first, it's in your last 90 days. And the reason that is because you're trying to bring it in for a landing and it needs to be smooth. And I will tell you that it's only going to be smooth if you prioritize taking care of a few things. You have to make time to do the job search, to nurture your network, to tailor resumes, to work on training that you might need to try and fill a gap or something that you've got in your resume. You have to take care of your VA medical. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And even if you don't think that you have any disability, you still should put in your disability claim, even if everything comes back as zero. Get your medical records put together, find a veteran service organization out there to partner with, and make that a priority as well. And the last piece is get your transition out processing taken care of. Get your terminal leave squared away, your permissive TDY, any of those type of things. Make sure that you're ready to transition from the military with grace and dignity.
So we thank you for spending time with us tonight, Jeff, to share your experiences with us. Don, do you have any more questions?
I would like to go back to one piece, and you said nurture your network. I talked to a lot of military, and it's very uncomfortable to step out, and because you feel like you're having to ask for something. They may be your friends, but you're having to ask for a connection. How did you work through that?
Well, I didn't start out by asking for things from my network. That's the big piece, right? Mm-hmm. It's just like any friendship. You want to develop a friendship with somebody. You want to be able to have a mutually supporting relationship where you chat and you talk about this different things. And so by working my network and by building people and finding people that I could ask questions to, or that I could monitor their posts or support their posts, or likewise, they could do the same for me. By the time it did come down to my 6-month mark and I started sending job applications out and resumes, it wasn't foreign then for me to reach into my network, give them a job ID number that I'd applied for, let them know that I had applied for this job, because by that point I had a relationship with the people that mattered, that I was really close with.
There you go.
So it wasn't strange. It wasn't awkward or anything like that. I think one of the biggest mistakes that someone can make is starting to build and nurture your network the day you put your first job application out, because then it comes off in the wrong way. It comes off needy, it comes off self-serving, and it's not like that. And so here, as I transition out, my intention is to still keep networking with those same exact people, because I learned a great deal from them. Some of them turned out to be wonderful friends that I hope to be able to maintain, just like you two gentlemen, for the time well into the future. And so don't look at it as a self-serving, have to do it just for the job transition. Look at it as a way to build a group of friends who are mutually supporting of one another.
Amen. Thanks. That was good. That's what I wanted to bring out. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff, for that. Gail, you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I do have a comment. I think it's incredible that how you brought your family into the interview prep. That didn't cross my mind to do so. I'm very well aware of all the different organizations that practice and provide interview prep, and I don't know why, but for some reason I didn't think to utilize the home resources and to take advantage of your drive home. I think that's incredibly smart, and it wasn't time wasted at all. So that's a great tip. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm going to wrap this up with a final thanks to our good friend Jeff. We're looking forward to eventually going to your retirement party sometime at the end of the summer. We've appreciated your friendship and your support of our mission, which is the Military Transition Roundtable. And from North San Antonio, I want to wish everyone a good night. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at LinkedIn. So again, good night, and thanks for being part of this wonderful program, Jeff. Thank you so much.